speaking of which, my yeah, speaking of which, my
Yeah.
incredibly smart ass
You did hear the
smart ass
recording
niece.
in progress, right, Anthony?
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay. Sorry. Good morning.
I'll tell the story after the fact.
We
But
can all tell the stories after the fact. Good morning. I'm Steve Rabinowitz. He's Jay Kaplan. That's Anthony Strait. And I have the wrong script over here, but I wanted to tell you snow fucking sucks. My TED Talk. Thank you very much. This is the On the Sports Lines Conference Championship edition. It really sucks. Been a day. All right. Tonight, more football. We have the AFC Conference Championship preview brought to you by TurboTax, the NFC Conference Championship preview brought to you by Quicken Loans, and the first piece is falling into the Coaching Carousel brought to you by Clippy, the Microsoft Word spell check master. Actually, our sponsors are our youtube.com/slash on the sports lines page and facebook.com/slash on the sports lines page. Like and subscribe to keep the sponsorship going. Today, we will start with the college national championship from this past Monday in Miami. The U is back to disappointment after Indiana DB Jamari Sharp intercepted Miami QB Carson Beck in the final minute to give the Indiana Hoosiers a 27-21 win and their first natty. Jamari's uncle, Miami Hurricane Glenn Sharp, was the one who 23 years ago had a controversial pass interference call
Ah!
go against him en route to Ohio State upsetting Miami
Wow.
in their last natty loss. You're going to hear a lot more about the winners here, though, as Jay,
Yes.
your final thoughts on the game, finishing the story of Coach Kurt Cignetti, Heisman QB Fernando Mendoza, and the Hoosiers. And if you want a movie about this team, I think I'm going to call it Hoosiers 2. Has a nice ring to it.
This was an instant classic. I mean, we had an epic fourth quarter. Teams combined for four scoring drives, highlighted by Heisman Trophy winning Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza, who was playing about 30 minutes from his high school, scoring what turned out to be the game-winning touchdown on a quarterback draw on 4th and 4 from the Miami 12 to push a 3-point lead to 10. You have two powerhouses you have a former powerhouse looking to reestablish themselves and a recent cellar dweller looking to finish a relocation of the penthouse of the sport. It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, Miami repeatedly battled back from three different 10-point deficits. Had one last shot being down six after Indiana's field goal with a minute 42 left. Canes drove from their own 25 to Indiana's 41 in 5 plays, and then Canes quarterback Carson Beck underthrew a pass intended for wide receiver Keelan Marion. And as you said, Rabbi, Hoosiers cornerback Jamari Sharp picks it off, seals the victory. At which point, Indiana fans who basically took over Hard Rock Stadium with a sea of red roared loud enough to reach 112 decibels. Two kneel downs later, it was official, and Indiana head coach Kurt Cignetti grinned for the first time this season, or so social media would have us believe. The number one Hoosiers completed one of the most dramatic two-year turnarounds, beating the number 10 Canes 27-21 on their home turf to become the first team in modern college football to go 16-0. The first-time national champion since Florida in 1996, and the third consecutive national champion from the Big Ten. Y'all know I'm a numbers guy, so here are a few courtesy of Christopher Kamrani, a college football writer for The Athletic. 1894, the last time a college football champ went 16-0. The school was just as unlikely. It was Yale. 713. That's the number of losses in school history by Indiana's football team across 125 seasons BC, as in before Cignetti, who was hired in 2023. He's only added 2 losses to that ledger in his first 2 years on the job. 20th. The Hoosiers ranking in AP's preseason poll, the only national champion since 1990, ranked lower in AP's preseason poll. Auburn, who was ranked number 22 in 2010. 2,149. That's Mendoza's ranking per 24/7 Sports Composites high school recruiting rankings while he was at Miami's Christopher Columbus High School. 13, the number of James Madison players who went through the transfer portal and followed Cignetti to Indiana. Defensive end Mikhail Kamara, who blocked Miami's third quarter punt that was recovered for a touchdown, was one of them. As Signetti said, quote, "Are there 8 first-round draft choices on this team? Probably not. No, there aren't. But this team, the whole was greater than the sum of its parts." 27-2. Signetti's record his first 2 years in Bloomington. The only other coach in the modern era who came close to that ridiculous start was Urban Meyer, who went 24-2 his first 2 seasons at Ohio State. Neither Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Jimbo Fisher, nor Dabo Swinney did remotely close to that in their first 2 seasons. I'm going to end the numerical portion of the program with that 4th and 4 that will go down as one of the greatest clutch plays in college football history. Signetti's first thought was to send out his kicking team, right? A field goal would have given Indiana only a 6-point lead, though. But as the play clock ticked down, he decided to take a timeout and think on it further, changed his mind, elected to be who he's been all his whole career, and go for it. Hell with the 3, he wanted 7. As offensive tackle Carter Smith said, quote, "Signetti said we're going for it, so sit in there and do your job." Mendoza took off, evaded the initial group of Hurricane defenders, got the first down, bounced off more tacklers, lunged towards the end zone, extends the ball over the goal line for the touchdown. Indiana's up 24-14. He took a shoulder in the back for his Herculean effort. He explained the play after the game to ESPN's Scott Van Pelt, and this is the football nerd in me appreciating this, saying that the Hoosiers were hoping Miami would come out in their standard Tampa 2 drop 8 coverage. If they did, Mendoza was supposed to run it. If they came out in man, he was supposed to throw it. But when he came out and saw they were in a hybrid look, zone coverage on one half of the field, man-to-man on the other half, he had a split second to decide which way to go, elected to call his own number, showing the guts that he's paired with all of that talent. Cherry on top of this. The touchdown was the cherry on top of the Sunday that has been a Cinderella season for both the quarterback and his team. If Cinderella was a bully instead of her wicked stepsisters. Whether the 2025 Hoosiers are the greatest team in college football history will be argued over and debated about for years to come. What is undeniable is that they've authored the greatest story in college football history. Signetti put it best, saying, quote, "We're 16-0, national champions at Indiana University, which I know a lot of people thought was never possible. It probably is one of the greatest sports stories of all time." Couldn't have said it better myself.
You know what's funny too, because that game was so well played. And probably one of the better national championship games we've had in a while. I would have to go back to maybe Alabama, Georgia in 2018, and that shootout. But you look at it as well too. Jamal Sharp interception was the lone turnover in the game. And that's just how closely competitive this game turned out. Despite the fact that Indiana held the ball for almost well over 35 minutes, compared to Miami only holding the ball for 23 minutes 42 seconds, it looked like the game that Indiana may pull away. You see Mark Foster break one for 57 yards, and suddenly Miami's back in the game. Then you see like Miami just kind of hang around,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like the game became a microcosm of the season for both the two teams' seasons. You think about this, Miami was one of the last teams into the college football playoffs, and all they did was go on the road, take out Texas A&M. They knocked out the defending champions, Ohio State, and it was a hang on against Ole Miss. And meanwhile, Indiana was the team that just became the Cinderella story that kind of came out of nowhere. It was unbeaten, but still a lot of credits wasn't sold on them. And
Right.
they capped it off with a national championship and a perfect season, the first perfect season under this new format. So I just look at some of these plays, the game itself. You talked obviously the Mendoza fourth down, the game stealing interception. How big was the missed field goal that Miami's
Mhm.
best drive, and it turned out to be a missed field goal that would have at least cut it to 10-3 at the half. Yes, it's a reinforcement that I hate kickers. I think we all know that by now.
Really?
But,
You hate kickers? Really?
oh yeah, I
Never heard
loathe
that.
them. I loathe them. Are you kidding me? They sit on the sideline. They drink tap soda. They don't drink Gatorade. You got one job and you barely do that. But besides the point, yeah, the game was just a well played game, well coached by both teams. Um, 30 million people tuned in to watch the game. One of the highest national championship games in recent memory.
Most
Um,
watched game
Most
in
watched
almost 10 years. That
Yep.
was
in
not an
10 years.
NFL game.
Yeah, so I gotta say, Indiana. I mean, this is a great game. As a fan, I definitely appreciate it. And we were all going back and forth in the group chat during the game. Like I said, give me more of this. And the best things to me though was through all the controversy about who got in, who didn't get in. It was the national championship was determined on the field as it should be. Like we didn't see everyone's sexy pick win it all because it's like okay, the Pirates fans say that. No, it was determined on the field by two teams that proved how good they really were, and probably wasn't given enough credit during the season just how good they were. Playing out on the field, it turns out to be a great game, and like I say, if there's more of this regardless of what happens to college football playoff or as a format, I'll sign up for it any day of the week as a fan.
Yeah, so just to kind of wrap it up over here. By the way, college football was a different game back when Yale went 16-0 back in the great year of 1894. They beat first of all, the season went from September 29th to December 1st. They were playing teams like the Crescent Athletic Club, the Orange Athletic Club, the Volunteer New York Athletic Association.
What?
Yeah, this is literally at the season, and you played multiple games during a week, by the way. Their season
Yikes.
from September 29th to December 1st. So it was a much different game back then.
Copy
so
that.
Can't really necessarily take it yourself. That's why it's a modern era 16-0, which is insane. And by the way, 5 years later, Indiana was born. And this year alone, they've had as many top 10 victories, 6, as they did the entire span of 1899 to 2024, which is insane when you think about it. They were 116 and 1 against AP top 10 opponents from 1899 to 2024. There's not a lot that could be said about this game, but I do want to say this. In the way Indiana's fans traveled, especially to the Peach Bowl,
Right.
Oregon, and
Yeah.
then now to be fair, Miami is a big area, is a big campus, but they have so many different qualities, and even though that the campus is 20 miles away from where whatever it's called now in Miami, Sun Life Stadium, Hard Rock Stadium, that it's still a big fan base, but to see a team that plays their home games every single week or every time that they play, having to go to silent counts, having to worry about false starts in what was by far at least a 60-40 atmosphere for Indiana is kind of insane to me when you look at it. Indiana has one of the best university alumni fan bases in the entire country. And to see the way that that fan base came out for this national championship game just kind of boggles my mind, and just really the whole entire run, to be fair. And that shows what we are living in the NIL world, because you can have a solid, and the transfer portal world, to be honest, most that also, when you can have a solid team that has really no flaws anywhere in it, and to see this team go 16-0 is a huge accomplishment.
Yep.
And I do have to say, it just, again, it boggles my mind to see how everything worked out for this team. And honestly, I don't think we're ever going to see anything like it again. Will we see another Indiana run a year from now? Possibly, but you're never going, even if you do see another Indiana run, you're not going to see what you saw now. As said, it is one of the best modern day stories that we've ever seen in college football.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the NFL Conference Championships. This is the second to last Sunday of the football season. We'll start with the top seed from the Western United States with an overwhelming defense and some questions at quarterback, welcoming in the lower seed with an MVP candidate at quarterback that makes them anything but the underdog in the game. And in one case, not the underdog. Wait, that explains both title games. I'm sorry. We'll start again. Let's start with the battle between coaches named Mike and Sean. Wait a minute, that still describes those 5 games. Okay, AFC Championship first. First game, AFC Championship. That's simple enough. All right. The New England Patriots and Denver Broncos are no strangers to an AFC Championship game in Mile High.
Nope.
At 12 years ago in the AFC Championship, they met 10 years ago, and they were both here in Invesco Field at Mile High Stadium. But Tom Brady and Peyton Manning are now commentating on games now instead of actually being under center.
Yes,
so welcome your quarterbacks. Drake May, where a win in his 31st start in the NFL can send him to San Francisco, and Jared Stidham, where a win in his first start in the season, the 7th to make their first start of the season in the playoff, and the first ever to start a conference championship in his first snaps of the season. May needed 2 seasons to get here. Stidham, of course, unfortunately needed an injury by Bo Nix in overtime against the Bills to get here. Jarrett is in his 6th season and has never played a game earlier than the second to last week of this season. So we'll start with the Broncos. Jay, after their 33-30 win in overtime to send the Buffalo Bills out of the postseason and their coach Sean McDermott right out of Orchard Park, what main thing is the main thing the Denver Broncos need to keep doing that will help send them to Super Bowl 60?
I'm calling this no Bo, no problem. The Broncos barely had a moment to enjoy their divisional round win over the Bills when they found out that starting quarterback Bo Nix, who threw for 279 yards and 3 touchdowns, added another 29 yards on the ground to lead the team in rushing and led them on the game-winning drive in overtime, was out for the remainder of the playoffs with a broken bone in his ankle sustained on that last drive of the game. Head coach Sean Payton learned of this after his post-game press conference, gave backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham the news, then went back to the podium to tell the reporters who were still there waiting to talk to Nix. So how can I go with no Bo, no problem as the main thing Denver needs to keep as the main thing? Shouldn't my angle be something related to their elite defense having to play a game for the ages in order for the Broncos to reach the Super Bowl? Maybe. But there's a reason that one of the first things Payton did after taking over as head coach of the Broncos in March of 2023 was sign Stidham to a 2-year, $10 million contract. That was followed by a 2-year, $12 million extension in March of 2025. This isn't just the usual cliche a head coach tells the press in this type of a situation. Payton actually believes he can win with Stidham at the control, saying, quote, that's his personality. He's going to rip it. That'll be our approach. He's got this calm demeanor that I think suits him well. He's played in big games in college. I said this at the start of the season. I felt like R2 was inside the best 32. I think everyone feels that way, but that's why that signing was important. And you don't know when it's happening, but I'm glad it's happened. Meaning the 2 is inside the best 32 means he firmly believes that Stidham could be a starting quarterback in this league for other teams. Now, Payton fully believes that after 3 seasons with the Broncos, Stidham is comfortable enough with the playbook to keep most of the options in the game plan, which was likely going to be as pass-heavy as it was against the Bills. The only real change will be more pocket passes, which play to Stidham's strength as opposed to the pass plays that got Nix out on the perimeter. Stidham, who according to sources had 3 practices this week with the ones, 2 full practices Wednesday and Thursday, and a red zone focus one on Friday, hasn't thrown a regular season pass in 2 years and has never played in a playoff game before. But he has a good arm, does a nice job of leading his receivers, which creates opportunities for yards after the catch. He's accurate to all 3 levels of the field, gets to his checkdowns quickly. His footwork has improved significantly since college, and he's not afraid to push the ball downfield. He's shown in 4 regular season starts over his 7-year career and in preseason, like this past one where he was 30 of 38, 78.9% completion for 376 yards, 9.9 per attempt, 4 TDs, 0 picks, and a 143 passer rating in 3 exhibition games, that he can make high-level throws. The knock against him is that sometimes he tries to force throws as if he has an elite arm. He's thrown 4 interceptions in those starts, so not putting Denver's elite defense in bad spots with interceptions due to bad or forced throws will be key for him. Another thing Payton will have to game plan for is sack avoidance due to the drop-off in mobility with Stidham. Nix's leg gave him high-level ability to evade pass rushers and create positive plays or at least avoid negative ones. The divisional round win was the 12th game this season in which Nix had 1 or 0 sacks. Stidham isn't a statue in the pocket, and he will try to buy time, but he's not Nix, as evidenced by the 13 times he's been sacked in his 4 starts, including 5 times in a start back in 2023. Part of that is due to a slightly slower release than Knicks has, which could be an issue, especially against interior pressure. The good thing is, Stidham will be protected by one of the NFL's best offensive lines. But that offensive line will be tested by a Patriots pass rush led by defensive tackles Christian Barmore and Milton Williams and edge rushers Harold Landry and K'Lavon Chasen when they send just 4. But Patriots have increased their blitz rate from 16.5 in the regular season to 29.8% in the playoffs, and they've totaled 9 sacks over their first 2 games. If Denver can keep the Patriots pass rush at bay, Stidham will have more time to both deal with the exotic coverages and pressures an aggressive New England defense is likely to throw at him, like cover 0, which Denver has struggled with. They're ranked 24th in EPA per dropback against it. The Patriots have increased their usage of that coverage of late. They've also brought a defensive back on blitzes on 28 dropbacks over their 2 playoff games. So something else the Broncos offensive line will need to account for. But if they are able to do that, it'll allow Stidham the time he needs to convert on the pure progression and shot plays that are a staple of Peyton's passing game. The one place where the game plan will need more of an adjustment with Stidham under center is the running game, which Knicks was a big part of on a weekly basis. Denver opened running back J.K. Dobbins' 21-day return to play practice window this week in the hopes that their leading rusher would be sufficiently recovered from his November Lisfranc injury, but he's been ruled out for the AFC title game. That means, once again, R.J. Harvey will be running back 1, and he'll have to personally do more than just the 6 for carries for 20 yards, 3.3 a carry. And he and Jaleel McLaughlin will have to do better than a combined 10 carries for 41 yards, 4.1 average, against the 6th best run defense in the NFL, which allowed just 48 yards on 22 carries, 2.2 a pop to Houston last week, and held them to 1.7 yards per carry on first and second down. Denver has to find a way to be more efficient in their run game, especially on early downs, in order to put Stidham in manageable third downs. Harvey was a key piece in the passing game as an outlet checkdown option, 5 catches for 46 yards, 9.2 a catch. And he'll need to be once again as wide receivers Pat Bryant and Troy Franklin both left the divisional round with injuries. Bryant with a concussion, Franklin with a hamstring. Neither one is likely to be 100% by Sunday. As we come to you, Bryant was a full participant in practice this week, wasn't given an injury status, so he's likely to play on Sunday. Franklin, who was second on the team in targets, catches, yards, and touchdowns, is limited in all 3 practices and is listed as questionable. With that in mind, Peyton may want to do better than target his number 1 wide receiver, Cortland Sutton, just twice in the first half and not complete a pass to him until the 4th quarter. Teams have taken Sutton away at times with shaded coverage and heavy zone looks, but if the Patriots are going to consistently bring extra rushers, the Broncos should take their shots with Sutton, especially in the red zone, where they'll have a matchup, especially if they move him into the slot. As good as Marvin Mims was, 8 catches on 8 targets, 93 yards, 11.6 a catch, and a touchdown, you can't bank on that from a player whose primary role most recently was as a return man, though Peyton's ability to scheme up deep shots could give Mims a similar amount of opportunities, especially against the Patriots secondary that has been susceptible to deep shots off players going in motion and then going off a double move. A couple of final things to keep in mind. First is a bit of a historical X factor, if you will. Stidham was drafted by the Patriots in 2019 and spent 2 years as Tom Brady's backup. His offensive coordinator, though, during those 2 seasons has a familiar name, Josh McDaniels. How well McDaniels knows Stidham from back then and how that knowledge in terms of what Stidham likes, doesn't like, is good at, is not good at, plays into the defensive game plan, specifically with the coverage and pressures New England will throw at Stidham, could decide the game. The second thing is also historical, but in a different way. Per a tweet on Sunday after the news broke that Nix would be out, former Eagles backup quarterback Nick Foles gave Denver fans some hope, writing, quote, "A positive note going into the game versus the Patriots is that they struggle against backup quarterbacks in championship-type games." Just saying is all.
Backup quarterbacks, and I know what Foles is meaning with that tweet, but Foles had a bunch of games to actually prepare himself.
Yes.
And had that really good game against the Vikings in the NFC Championship. Nobody has started a game in the playoffs with no snaps since Joe Webb of the Minnesota Vikings did for Christian Ponder back in 2020.
Take us back, Rabbi.
And that's the only time it happened. And we found out about that, I remember, literally 2 hours before the game. They've had so this will be very interesting to see.
Yes, sir.
Happens. Anthony, after their 28-16 win against the Houston Texans last week, that featured more turnovers than any showstopper of the Great British Baking Show. What does the New England Patriots need to keep doing to find themselves 15 days from now in the city by the bay?
Well, it's pretty simple for the Patriots defense. They gotta just they gotta do what they continue doing. Maybe turn the game into a rock fight. I mean, you think about this, and this is by the way a key note. Harold Landry III, who was the Patriots leading sack leader for 8.5, he is out for tomorrow for the AFC Championship game. So that's a big blow because the Patriots are going to have to generate some pass rush against one of the top offensive lines in football, the Denver Broncos. How the Patriots have been doing it though, at least in the playoffs, they don't really win one-on-one battles. It's been more scheme based. The blitz rate has gone up to almost 40%. It's at 38.6 particularly. So they're going to have to be a little more creative with the scheme, the coverages and the schemes. The first thing it comes to stopping the run. I think that's the most obvious thing. Being it and forcing Stidham to have to drop back and throw in long situations where they can generate more pressure. Maybe send an extra guy out of defensive backfield to get after him. Disguise their coverages as well. They're gonna have to be able to just be very creative, versatile. Keep in mind, Stidham has not thrown a pass in a regular season game since January 7th, 2024, as you pretty much just brought up. So you don't have a lot of game film to rely on as far as recent memory, but as far as just being able to be able to disguise your coverages, mix things up a little bit, that's going to be very important in the idea of making Stidham have to beat you. I mean, if he's getting a running game, that's gonna make things a lot easier for him. But another thing too, what New England's gonna have to struggle with, and it's something that gets kind of downplayed when your opponent going into Denver, the mile high air. I mean, that just it's a common denominator. They're gonna have to deal with it. They were scheduled to fly out to Denver today just to kind of spend less time having to deal with the thin air and having to adjust to it. If you are the New England Patriots, you want to try to force as many throwing outs and get off the field as much as possible. We know that opponents tend to struggle with the high altitude, and the longer you stay on that field, the worse it's going to get. And look, I'll tell you a personal story. My oldest niece lived in Colorado for a couple of years, and she would tell me how it took her really a couple of days to kind of get adjusted to it. Your lungs burn. You just can't get enough oxygen, especially when you exert yourself physically. How the Patriots defense can get quickly adjusted to that is going to help out. But it helps them even more. They can force some throwouts, maybe force some takeaways as well, and get off the field and set up a shorter field to Drake May, who we saw last week in the last two playoff games, has been hit or miss as far as his performance as a quarterback. He's been good and not so good. So we've had a combination of both. But the Patriots defense is going to have to just simply do things the old-fashioned way, mix things up, try to generate pressure, and stop the run game. I mean, it's very simple, but when you're throwing the high altitude has a bit of an X factor here. It makes it more essential that you want to try to get as many three and outs as possible. Try to take the ball away as much as you can, and get off the field. I mean, that's another thing. Substituting guys in and out, keeping guys fresh. That's a lot of things that the Patriots going to have to take into consideration, not just with a backup quarterback, but also everything that extra added opponent with the high altitude. You have to take that you're going to have to factor into pretty much any game plan with your opponent, the Denver Broncos, and you have to play in that stadium.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the Broncos are going to need to do is kind of do what Josh Allen did last week. Josh Allen makes a mistake, you capitalize on it. And Josh Allen might make the same amount of mistakes every game, but the Denver Broncos did what they need to do and basically capitalize on every single mistake that needed to be that was made by him. And that's a difference for a team that is good in defense and to a team that's elite in defense. And you don't always see that every single time you watch some of these games. So we'll see what happens. All right. Now for me, I like to nitpick and ask teams to course correct. So here we go. Both teams need to fix some things before the big game. let's start with the Broncos. Now, last week the Broncos, their rushing attack, going against the rushing attack has been very good this year. They were second only to the Jacksonville Jaguars, allowing only 1,548 rushing yards, and only one of 5 teams to hold their opponents under 4 yards a carry, 3.9 yards per attempt. Last week, however, not so much. They let the Bills run for 183 yards on the ground. James Cook 117, Josh Allen 66, and that was 5.1 yards a clip. Mobile quarterbacks have been a huge problem this season for the Denver Broncos, including when they played Jackson Dart early in the season in one of those games where they kind of blew a big lead. But that's the key, because if they do not get that together, they're going to have the combination of Rashawn Stevenson and Travion Henderson, Stevenson started really good, had 31 of 70 rushing yards, coming in consecutive carries of more than 9 yards in the first quarter last Sunday. And if they can do that, it's going to be different, because Stevenson May is an effective scrambler as well and designed runner. He did very well running the ball in the game against the Chargers in their wild card game. Again, that's a team that's something that you really want to focus on if you are the Denver Broncos. The less that they can stop, the more that they can stop the run of New England, that means Drake May is going to have to throw the ball. And if Drake May throws the ball, that gets into what the Patriots need to do. And Drake May better hold on to the mother effing ball. He has to. Because May has fumbled 6 times in these playoffs. He's lost 3 of them. If the Chargers or Texans hadn't basically given it right back to them, May's fumbles could have been catastrophic. 19 games this year, May has a league-high 14 fumbles. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and Cam Ward have 11, and May, of course, has lost 6 of those 14 fumbles. When mentioning about it after Sunday, said, I've got to do a better job of stepping up and hitting guys downfield when we have chances. Got to be better with the ball when we take off and running. Football is a prized possession. Broncos defense plays a 3-4 alignment and challenges offensive lines to identify where its standard 4 rushes are coming from. That's not good. But then that's also leading to Will Campbell, the rookie left tackle, who has been destroyed in the last few games. He's allowed 10 pressures, second most in the NFL, 4 sacks, and that's the most in the past 2 games. And basically, you can't let the quarterback get hit. And earlier this season, when Ramondre Stevenson, their running back, had multiple fumbles early in the season, Vrabel worked with him to make sure that he mentioned it was a team-wide issue and not his issue. And that's how Stevenson stopped losing the fumbles after that. Now, if you say it's the pass rush, yeah, they played very good pass rushes. The Chargers were 6th in the NFL in sacks per pass attempts. They sacked May 5 times and 2 forced fumbles. Houston was 2nd in the NFL. And of course, they have all-pro pass rushers in Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. May was sacked 5 times in that divisional round game, fumbled 4 times, losing 2. The Broncos, they have Nick Benito with 14 sacks, Jonathan Cooper with 8 sacks, Sean Franklin Myers with 7.5 sacks, Zach Allen with 7 sacks, and led the NFL in quarterback hits with 47. So kind of leads to what Anthony's point was. They got to make it a rock fight. If they hit a rock fight, the Broncos can be David and the Patriots could be Goliath, even though it's only like a 3.5-point spread. So no David Goliath reference really there when you think about it. But if every part of that happens, the Broncos and Jared Stidham will be heading back to San Francisco. The Broncos organization will be heading back to San Francisco 10 years after Peyton Manning was literally the game manager that led them to their Super Bowl 50 victory. Jared Stidham might have to be the game manager that leads them to their Super Bowl 60 victory. They're going to need the defensive performance that they did in 2015-16 to show up in 2025-26. All right, moving on to the NFC. It's the unstoppable force of the Los Angeles Rams versus the immovable object that is the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams were the NFL's #1 scoring offense. The Seahawks were the tops in scoring defense. And when you have division rivals in the playoffs, you know that means it's matchup number 3. Round 1 in Week 11 went to the Rams at 21-19. Round 2 went to the Seahawks in a Week 16 classic 38-37 in overtime after Seattle went for two and was successful. So with the two matchups in the regular season, the score, 58-57 Rams. Total yards, 838-29 Rams. All-time record between the two teams, 29-28 Seahawks. All-time points scored, 1223 to 1222 Seahawks. Damn. This is the sixth conference title game between division rivals since the year 2000. The previous five went on to hoist Lombardi afterwards. Anthony, you're on the Seahawks, who closed out this season of San Francisco 49ers medical by demolishing San Fran last week, 41-6. Now, what's the main thing that needs to stay the main thing for Seattle to get them to that main thing in Santa Clara?
Well, they have to do something they haven't done in the previous two games in Matthew Stafford. Actually, a quarter sack. I mean, think about this. In two games, Matthew Stafford has dropped back 79 times, 0 sacks, which is surprising considering both these teams were among the tops in sacks with 47. Both teams actually have 47 total sacks for the season, which is very high. But you think about this, and going back to that last meeting, Stafford threw for a season high 457 yards. They were able to, at the very least, keep his completion percentage to under 60%. So if there was one caveat to that was they were able to generate some hits, able to generate some pressure, and at the very least get the old-fashioned get arms and hands in front of the quarterback. They try to knock the ball down at the line of scrimmage, but they gotta generate pressure. I mean, we all and they gotta figure out a way to do it without sending extra guys, which Stafford throughout his whole career has absolutely shredded defenses. When you send extra guys out of the secondary to try to put pressure on him. So you look at the pass rushers, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, DeMarcus Lawrence, Derek Hill. These are guys that are gonna have to win their one-on-one battles. I mean, look, some of these guys on the made the Pro Bowl for a reason. They gotta win the one-on-one matchups. Gotta get to the backfield. Try to get Stafford on the ground, but at the very least, make him uncomfortable. Because we've seen with these Rams weapons, we saw it on full display throughout this regular season. Not really so much last week in the playoffs, because that game was over literally on the opening kickoff. But yeah, we've seen it time and time again. You have to generate pressure on Stafford. He's too good to just sit back and just go through his progressions and pat the ball, whatever the case may be. You're gonna have to just get into his face, knock him off his spots, and that's pretty much the bare bones about it. They have to be able to get to Stafford. They play on toes, so you can't really say dirty his uniform up, but you want to rattle his senses a few times at the very least to let him know and let that internal clock of his speed up just a little bit. And that would definitely play into more of what the Seahawks want to do as far as the exotic coverages on the back end as well. They play a cover 2 to cover 3 shell defense, so they'll be able to take away the big plays. But you also don't want Stafford dinking and dunking you to death like he was able to do a number of times in Chicago last week in the elements. So the Seahawks, is long story short, get to Stafford, knock him around, and go from there. Go on mute.
I forgot my dog was barking. It's interesting.
Oh, okay.
The average third down yards this year for the Rams is the lowest in the league at 5.7. No team had an average of below 6, and the league average is just at 6.9 yards. Not only, by the way, has the Seahawks not gotten to Matthew Stafford this year in any of their two meetings, didn't get to them in 2024, and the last time a D lineman sacked Stafford was Carlos Dunlap in 2021.
Wow, that's going back.
So it's been a while. He didn't play either matchup in 2022, but the time when they got sacked in 2023 was by Witherspoon in the secondary, so it was kind of a covered sack. Okay, Jay, and I'm sorry, Anthony, I will phrase this in a way that makes you happier. Jay, Harrison Beavis, the kicker, did exactly what he was supposed to do last week for the Rams and kicked the game-winning field goal to beat the Bears 20-17 in overtime. It's a game that basically defined the Chicago Bears' crazy-ass 2025 season, minus the whole finishing the comeback part.
Right.
So now the Rams are in the championship game. What's the main thing that the Rams need to do to send them back to California for the Super Bowl?
I'll get into it in a second, but y'all know the reason why McVay made the change in kickers to Mevis down the stretch of the season. It was because he's a big, thick kid who grew up kicking in cold weather, and McVay had a bit of an inkling that he was going to need a kicker who could handle that type of condition.
Does that mean they change him back for the Super Bowl because it's San Francisco isn't necessarily cold weather itself?
No. The main thing for the Rams, go back to being the balanced offense you've been most of this season. The road to getting back to that dynamic, high-powered, balanced offense that was number one in the NFL in scoring, 30.5 points per game, and success rate, 50.46%, and number two in EPA at 0.12, started right after the Rams' 20-17 overtime win over the Bears in the divisional round, when head coach Sean McVay did a mea culpa, straight up admitting, quote, I did not like the feel for the flow of the game that I had outside of the first series where our guys did a great job. Defensively, it kept us in it in spite of how poor of a job I did for our group. But like I said, I'm really grateful for this group being able to find a way, stick with it, and be able to overcome some bad coaching by me tonight, end quote. He was referring to his inability to adjust to what Bears defensive coordinator Dennis Allen was throwing at him until the fourth quarter, when his play calling led to a 14-play, 91-yard touchdown drive to give Los Angeles a 17-10 lead as the Rams escaped and narrowly avoided a second straight divisional round loss. McVay taking the blame wasn't just the usual post-game coach speak. For a significant part of the game, the Rams seemed to be a step behind the Bears and were fortunate to be tied at 10-10 at the half. Quarterback Matthew Stafford couldn't seem to find a rhythm for most of the game, struggling for most of the second and third quarters, low-lighted by the offense having a stretch of 3 straight drives where they went 3 and out and didn't gain more than 20 yards in any of them. Overall, he completed less than 50% of his passes. He was 20 of 42. That's 47.6% completion. 258 yards, but he averaged just 6.1 per attempt. Didn't throw an interception, but he didn't have a touchdown either. And his passer rating, 67.4. I'm reasonably sure that the snowy Soldier Field weather, along with the finger injury he sustained in the wildcard win over Carolina, also played a part in his struggles. But the MVP version of Stafford showed up in overtime with a pair of ridiculous throws on the game-winning drive. First, 12-yarder across his forward-pointing shoulder on 1st and 10 to Davante Adams, who made a hell of a catch at the sidelines to get them across midfield. And then 3 plays later, he correctly anticipated a blitz, fired a laser to Puka Nacua for 16 yards to convert a 3rd and 6, getting the Rams to the Chicago 27-yard line. 3 plays, 3 yards later, kicked the game-winning field goal that sent them to Seattle for the NFC title game. A big part of McVay finding his play-calling groove was remembering that he actually has a running game, and it has the highest rushing success rate, 50.5, in the NFL this season. After only running the ball 7 times in the first half and only 4 more times in the third quarter, McVay called on running backs Kyron Williams and Blake Corum 19 times in the fourth quarter and overtime. They didn't rack up a ton of yardage. Their longest run was 10 yards, and there were multiple tackles for loss, but it was just enough to wear down a Bears offense that had the Rams offense out of Bears defense that had the Rams offense out of sync for most of the game. 8 of the 14 plays on that 91-yard TD drive that opened the fourth quarter were runs, and McVay expertly mixed run and pass in OT, which helped settle the offense down after a previously rough start to the night, returning them to their previous identity as the best offense in the NFL. Williams, 1,252 yards. Corum, 746 yards, combined for 1,998 yards rushing and 4.9 yards per carry during the regular season for a rushing attack that ranks 7th in the NFL, 126.6 yards per game, and 6th at 4.6 yards per carry. The question is, which version of the Rams' running game will show up for their third matchup with NFC West rival Seahawks, who allowed the lowest yards per carry in the NFL, 3.7. In the Rams' 21-19 Week 11 win, they rushed for 119 yards on 22 carries. It's 5 yards per carry overall, 4.4 yards after contact. They caused the Seahawks to miss tackles at a 31.8% rate and had 4 runs at 18-plus yards, which led to an explosive run rate of 18.2% on those 22 carries. Those last 2 were Seattle's worst marks of the season. in those next-gen stats. In the Rams' 38-37 overtime loss in Week 16, they rushed for 124 yards, but it took them 39 carries to do it. That's 3.2 yards per carry overall, and they only averaged 2.4 yards after contact. They caused the Seahawks to miss tackles at only a 10.3% rate, and they had a 0% explosive run rate on those 39 carries, as their longest run was 9 yards. Those last two were among the Seahawks' best rates of the season in those next-gen stats. The Rams will need the balance the better version of their running game provides, but when you have wide receivers like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, the passing game will always take center stage, and which takes us back to the presumptive regular season MVP quarterback Matthew Stafford, who will need to play like one against Mike McDonald's dark side defense, which gave him a fit and a half in Week 11 and just a plain old fit in Week 16. Not that the Seahawks defense needs a blueprint against Stafford, but it'll be interesting to see how much of what the Bears did winds up in their game plan. Chicago packed the intermediate areas of the field, forcing the Rams to throw more passes outside the numbers, all while blitzing off the edge, forcing Stafford off his spots and making him throw from uncomfortable platforms, which led to him having his most incompletions, 22 in any game this season, and his worst dropback success rate in any game this season, 31.8. Per next-gen stats, Stafford has the lowest passer rating when facing pressure in the postseason, 24.8. Completing just 6 of 20 passes, 30% completion percentage for just 89 yards. That's barely 4.5 yards per attempt. No touchdowns and 1 pick. You want to put that passer rating into perspective? If a quarterback only throws incompletions, he winds up with a passer rating of 39.6. Not what you want from your quarterback going into a game against a defense that pressured quarterbacks on 38.9% of their dropbacks, the 4th highest pressure rate in the NFL in the regular season. And yet, as Anthony noted, that vaunted Seattle defensive pressure never reached Stafford. He was hit just 7 times, 0 sacks, 0 turnovers in those 79 dropbacks in 2 regular season meetings. Just like with the running game, the Rams' passing attack had 2 distinctly different performances in the 2 regular season meetings. In the Week 11 win, Stafford, 15 of 28, 53.6% complete. For a season low 130 yards, just 4.6 per pass. 2 touchdowns, no interception, 89.9 passer rating. In the Week 16 loss, he went 29 of 49, 59.2% completion. Season high, 457 yards through the air, 9.3 per attempt, 3 touchdowns, no picks, a 110.7 passer rating. Which version shows up in the NFC title game will be key for the Rams. Another key to Stafford, Nacua, and Adams having success in the passing game will be how much they see man coverage versus single high safety coverages. In Week 11, Seattle played their highest rate of man coverage, 39.6, and single high safety, 64.3% all year. In Week 16, man coverage, just 19.6% rate, just below their season average, and single high safety at just 37.7 rate. That's their 4th lowest in any game this year, but with some serious swings. Man coverage, 10.5%, single high safety, 15.8% in the first half. In the second half, their man coverage rate jumped to 26.9, single high safety coverage rate jumped to 50% flat. Now, Stafford was more efficient against man coverage this season, 26 touchdowns against just 2 picks, 118.7 passer rating, and a 0.33 EPA per dropback. Those numbers were worse across the board against zone coverages, 19 touchdowns, 6 picks, 99.2 passer rating, 0.13 EPA per dropback. Seattle's blowout of San Francisco in the divisional round saw the Seahawks play zone at an 84.2% rate and split safety at a 76.3% rate. It would be interesting if those rates are similar in an attempt to keep Stafford, Nacua, and Adams in check, and how McVay utilizes his 13 personnel, three tight end play calls, both runs and passes, to mitigate that. It will be a chess match, as the Seahawks are one of the few teams that don't play their base defense against 13 personnel. The Rams ran the most plays out of 13, 313, 90 more than the next team, and were number 1 in the NFL in success rate, 30.48%, total EPA, 77.43, and were top 5 in EPA per pass and EPA per run out of 13 personnel. Flip side of that is that Seattle was 19th in EPA per play, 15th in EPA per pass, and 20th in EPA per rush against 13 personnel. Granted, small sample size, they only saw 91 plays with 13 personnel all season, most of that coming against the Rams. The other thing the Rams can utilize is Stafford's ability to manipulate and move defenders, especially against zone coverage in the middle of the field with his eyes, which he does better than most quarterbacks, to create explosive play opportunities in the passing game, especially in the middle of the field, regardless of the personnel grouping. Seattle, against all other teams on throws to the middle of the field, allowed 0.5 EPA per dropback. That's a top 8 rate. 6 touchdowns. They had 12 picks. Stafford shredded them to the tune of a 0.28 EPA per dropback, going 29 of 48, 60% completion, 407 yards, 8.5 per attempt, 5 TDs, no picks on throws over the middle of the field in their 2 meetings. This will be the first time the number 1 scoring offense, the Rams, will face the number 1 scoring defense, the Seahawks, in a conference championship game since 2014, when Seattle's number 1 defense beat Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers' number 1 offense. Since 1990, the number 1 scoring offense is 0-4 against the number 1 scoring defense in a conference championship or Super Bowl. 3 of the 4 offenses had the NFL MVP that season. And to top it off, the passing yardage leader is 0-6 in the playoffs against the number 1 scoring defense in the last 50 seasons. So not only will McVay, Stafford, and the Rams offense be going against a Seahawks defense that can give them trouble all day long, they'll also be going against some pretty heavy NFL playoff history. Should make for a hell of a chess match in our second Sean versus Mike conference championship game of the day.
That's a lot of numbers. You're going to have to give me a TLDR after that when everything is done. Okay. Finally, while Seattle and LA have done
the old quarterback NFL nerd geeks got, I kind of got out of control. I'll grant you. There's so much good stuff.
Luckily, AI can summarize everything at the end. Finally, while Seattle and LA have done a whole lot of right to get here, there are some fixes being done. And for Seattle, it starts with Sam Darnold, who Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen, close your eyes, could be the first drafted 2018 class to make the big game. Wins. So the 8th-year veteran quarterback got his first NFL playoff win last weekend, playing through injuries to beat San Francisco in the divisional round. And what's that, Anthony? Getting an A on the test without having to do too much? He threw only 17 passes in that game after Rashid Shaheed returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. 12 of 17, 124 yards, 1 TD. Not bad. 4,408 yards during the season. That's 238.1 per game, 67.7% of his throws, a 25-14 touchdown to interception ratio. Doesn't run the ball a lot, and whatever. But the Rams defense is giving this guy fits a lot. Remember, it was the game back in last January, the game that was moved to Arizona, where Chris Shula destroyed him and probably destroyed his time with Minnesota. Maybe give him a thank you. Shula's intercepted him 4 times in the Rams win, but then Shula, when he came to LA, did it again and intercepted him 4 times in a win over Seattle in November, twice more in the December rematch, but Darnold, the Seahawks rallied to win. We're going to talk a little bit about that game most specifically in a second. Remember, 4 interceptions in that game, but they all came under duress. We'll talk about that in a moment. 4 games against the Rams this past 2 seasons, 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 16 sacks, 1-3 record. Forgive me for I have said Jay. I'm going to mention QBR here. QBR of 34.3 in those games. It's the worst among 11 opponents he has faced twice in that span. 58.4 is what he has in every other game since 2024. Now, he just got drilled in all of these games. In some of these passes, he got drilled by Carmen Kitchens, the safety. He got drilled a second time and then just attempted a jump throw at points in that game. But again, it's the 4th quarter, and he also got sacked again in that game and could have also definitely led to the end of the game as Kobe Turner got to him as Darnold was trying to get to Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, what Darnold did in the end of that game was huge. That's when they finally said, "Go nuts, Sam. We have nothing to lose." And Sam just destroyed that defense in that entire game. And but again, that's what they're going to need to do. Make sure Sam Darnold gets to be able to throw the ball more. Zach Charbonnet, the kind of thunder to the lightning that is Kenneth Walker, the third in the backfield, is out for the season.
Yep.
So, but here's a matchup that it could really prove everything because you're going to need a little bit more from the quarterback. Seahawks rookie left guard Gray Zabel versus Rams nose tackle Kobe Turner. And this is going to be a key for Sam to have time. In that 38-37 overtime win against the Rams in Week 16, Seattle's win, Turner beat Zabel for a pair of snacks and finished with 5 quarterback pressures. Those are the only 2 sacks Zabel allowed all season. Zabel finished the night in that game with 4 pressures allowed. That matched his season high, and Turner in that game snagged an interception. But he also did the same thing. He also helped out by helping Kenneth Walker II, who was really the only offense in that game for about 3 quarters, and provided steady pass protection to help clear a throwing lane for Donald with the 2-point conversion at time. Both have played at a high level since then. In Seattle's past 3 games, Zabel has allowed only 1 pressure and 80 pass opportunities. And during the Rams playoff run, Turner is the 7th player since 2000 on the Rams side to record 5+ pressures, 5+ quarterback hurries in back-to-back postseason games. So give Sam Darnold some time, and you're going to be a happy man on Sunday night. Now, on the other side, it's interesting how you mentioned Matthew Stafford. What he's done over the last few weeks, he's kind of not been himself pretty much since Thanksgiving. And the reason for that is probably Davante Adams. He did make his return in the NFC wildcard game. He was a big-time red zone target before his injury in December. 5 for 72 in that wildcard game against Carolina. Regular season, 489 yards, 60 receptions, 114 touchdowns. Targets, 14 touchdowns. That's his yards are the fewest since 2015, which is Adams' second in the league. And all of his touchdowns came before the month of December. And in that game against the Rams game against the Seahawks in Week 11, Adams had 1 catch, 1 yard, 1 touchdown. He didn't score. He didn't have huge numbers, but his catches have been huge. In that game against the Bears, he caught 2 receptions for 60. In the game against the Panthers, 2 receptions for 60 yards of the game-winning drive. In the Rams overtime win against the Bears, even though he only had 2 catches for 24 yards on 6 targets, he had a 12-yard grab coming on a beautiful sideline grab that led to the field goal to end the game. Adams and the Packers lost in overtime to the Seahawks in the 2014 NFC Championship game at Lumen Field. That was his last time playing in an NFC Championship game. Adams has been to, that's his second to last time. He played in 2016, got killed by the Falcons. And a couple of other times too, but I'm sorry, that was his first time. This is the 4th time. Adams is hungry to get back to this point. It's never been to a Super Bowl, and I expect him to have a big game. If he doesn't have a big game, they don't win. It's hard to get to cover Puka Nacua from having a big game. If Davante is on his game, hasn't really been since December, the Rams are going back to the Super Bowl and going to San Francisco. All right, finally tonight, time for some good old-fashioned on the sports lines math. Here it goes. In the NFL, if 10 coaches get fired this offseason and 0 owners take any responsibility, and we talked about the one local team last show hiring their man, can we talk about the rest of them on the Super Bowl show? Hell no, I ain't running that much back then. We ain't doing 2 segments of that shit. We're going to do part 1 of our coaching carousel here and talk about 3 of the new hires with respect to Jesse Minter, who got hired by the Ravens this week. A
great hire, by the way.
A great hire. A Harbaugh disciple, Jim Harbaugh disciple, going to replace John Harbaugh.
A Mike McDonald disciple.
Well, they're not. They're I would say they're more equals than they are disciples.
Well, you got to remember, they both are disciples of a Harbaugh defense, as both were coordinators under him at Michigan.
Yeah, so they both kind of know it. So it's really just the Jim Harbaugh coaching tree, which ironically enough is part of the John Harbaugh tree because of family genius. But anyway, we're going to talk about 3 new hires. And Jay, we'll start with you as you talk about the best friend of Baker Mayfield, Kevin Stefanski. If you had seen social media this week, Stefanski will be moving indoors to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He's going to the Falcons. What's your first impression on that hire?
Baker, I'm glad you've resurrected your career in Tampa Bay. You needed to get the hell out of Cleveland as much as Stefanski did. But dude, seriously, get over yourself. Chill out. My first impression of Stefanski's hiring was if only he'd waited a couple of days, he probably would have been number one on a list of replacements for Sean McDermott's old job in Buffalo. Because if ever there was an ideal opening for an offensive guy like Stefanski after the revolving door of mediocre quarterbacks he had to suffer through in Cleveland, Baker Mayfield somewhat aside, being able to work with Josh Allen would have been the ultimate reward for suffering through the Deshaun Watson era in Cleveland, which had the side effects of taking a sledgehammer to both the Browns' draft capital and their cap space. That being said, my actual first impression is that his fit with the Falcons is intriguing, both in terms of what he'll bring culture-wise in the locker room, schematically on the field, and how he'll work in terms of power and say he'll have with owner Arthur Blank's new and unique front office structure. Stefanski's hire gives the Falcons an experienced voice in a building that is not likely to have much of it, with Falcons legend Matt Ryan as the new president of football. The lack of the word operations was apparently deliberate for reasons I and plenty of others still do not understand in his first front office role, and a likely first-time GM whose position has yet to be interviewed for, let alone ready to be filled as we come to you this Saturday morning. Blank had hoped to have the new head coach and GM hires done back-to-back as a sign that the two would approach their jobs with equal power and authority, but it seems that the Falcons' decision makers were really high on having Stefanski signed to a deal as soon as possible, as evidenced by the fact that Ryan interviewed Stefanski for the first time on January 11th, and it seemed like that was enough as he was introducing the two-time AP NFL Coach of the Year winner as the 20th head coach in franchise history and the fourth full-time head coach since the turn of the decade on January 17th, saying, quote, "We're thrilled to land a lead-by-example leader in Kevin Stefanski who brings a clear vision for his staff, our team, and a closely aligned focus on building this team on fundamentals, toughness, and active collaboration with every area of the football operation. Kevin's style of leadership, combined with the staff and infrastructure in place here in Atlanta, gives us confidence in our shared vision for the team, and we are excited to have him as the leader of our football team." Ryan later added, quote, "Coach Stefanski is a team-first leader who puts a premium on accountability for everyone and a player-driven culture. His experience in Cleveland and Minnesota has given him a great understanding of the importance of working in sync with scouting, personnel, and the rest of the football staff to maximize talent across the roster and doing everything possible to put our players in the best position to succeed." Holy crap, that's a lot of cliches, ain't it, guys? Stefanski doesn't need to be the center of attention to do that. He simply needs to provide a heretofore mediocre team with an elevated, consistent baseline of competence. Stefanski is coming off a 6-year tenure in Cleveland where he went 45-56, made the playoffs twice, went 1-2. His .446 winning percentage is 19th among active NFL coaches. That revolving door at quarterback was a large part of why the Browns were 29th in the NFL in scoring, 20.3 per game, 24th in point differential, minus 296, and 31st in offensive EPA, total offensive EPA, minus 563.4 over those 6 seasons. Stefanski had both ends of the spectrum with the Browns, winning only 8 games combined over these last 2 seasons, while also leading Cleveland to a pair of 11 win seasons in his first and fourth seasons, just their second and third double-digit win seasons since the change of century. Now, Stefanski did move quickly to get his key staff members in place. Jeff Ulbrich was retained as defensive coordinator to run that side of the ball, which provides continuity for core playmakers like edge rusher James Pearson, Jalen Walker, defensive tackle Brandon Dorlus, quarterback A.J. Terrell, and safety Xavier Watts. Tommy Rees, who was Stefanski's offensive coordinator in Cleveland, is following him to Atlanta. Rees spent the last 2 seasons with the Browns, starting as a passing game specialist and tight ends coach in 2024 before being promoted to OC in 2025. And he did handle some play calling duties when Stefanski gave that up for a stretch last season. Replacing Dwayne Ledford, who was beloved by the Falcons offensive lineman as O-line coach, with Bill Callahan, who is one of the best to ever oversee an offensive line room, is a big get for Stefanski. Bubba Ventrone is a likely possibility for special teams coordinator. He spent the last 3 seasons with Stefanski in Cleveland in that role, and the Browns led the NFL in special teams EPA in 23 and 24 before slipping to 26th this past season. Now, Stefanski is inheriting an offense with several playmakers, starting with do-everything running back Bijan Robinson, who had 1,478 yards rushing, 820 yards receiving, and led the NFL with 2,298 yards from scrimmage. He has a definitive number 1 wide receiver in Drake London, who was first in receptions, receiving TDs, second in targets, receiving yards, and third in receptions. And he has one of the better tight ends in free agent to beat Kyle Pitts, who led the team in targets, catches, and receiving yards. All three are good fits for his scheme. He'll use plenty of the wide zone concepts that have been a staple of the Falcons' run game, but he's also going to add some more gap concepts to further and better showcase Robinson's talents. Robinson will likely get an uptick in carries if Nick Chubb circa 2021-22 is the blueprint. Stefanski also likes to feed his number one wide receiver, which will appeal to London. And the way Stefanski likes to use his tight end just might make Pitts want to re-up in Atlanta. The obvious issue, and the big reason Stefanski was hired, is the quarterback situation. And as noted, if anyone knows how to deal with a quarterback situation that's in flux, it's Stefanski. He won his second Coach of the Year award in 2023 for making the playoffs during a season where, for various reasons, he had to start 5 different quarterbacks. Job number 1 will be to determine if Michael Penix Jr., who was drafted number 8 overall in 2024 and is recovering from his 3rd ACL injury, is the guy. He's shown flashes, but he's also been inconsistent enough that a new coaching staff and a new GM, neither of whom drafted him, won't likely stake their future on him if he can't take the next step in his development. That'll hinge somewhat on his full return to health, as well as his ability to adjust to Stefanski's preference for having his quarterback operate from under center, which they did 39.5% of the time in Cleveland. That's the 7th highest rate in the NFL during the 6 seasons Stefanski ran the Browns offense. While Penix has been just under center just 4.2% of the time while in Atlanta. The wild card in the room, in that quarterback room, is Kirk Cousins, who had his contract restructured and is likely to be released right after the NFL New Year begins on March 12th. The reason I call him a wild card is because A, who knows if Penix will be 100% healthy by September, and 2, Cousins' best statistical season as a starter was 2019 in Minnesota, where he had a 107.4 passer rating and a 0.17 EPA per dropback. Stefanski was his offensive coordinator that year. Is any of that a reason for Cousins to not look for a new address? We'll see. Look, having rookies in the front office and an unsettled situation at quarterback isn't anything new for Stefanski. Arthur Blank is a step up from the Haslams in the owner's box. Then again, that's not a high bar to clear. Overall, my final first impression is that this is a really good hire by the Falcons, and I think Kevin Stefanski is in a better position now than he was at the end in Cleveland. How they draft and how they sort out the quarterback situation will go a long way in terms of how much better than 8-9 they'll be in his first season.
I believe they have their first round draft pick this year thanks to a trade from last year with the Rams, but
there you go.
We'll see what happens. But it's interesting, and if Pitts doesn't re-sign, and I think the way he ended his season is going to help raise his value, don't be surprised that David Njoku, who is now kind of
there you go
1B to Harold Fannin Jr., moves down to Atlanta. Okay. Anthony, the Miami Dolphins said that a first-time offensive guru becoming a first-time head coach was no bueno. So they went to a first-time head coach from a defensive guru position. Your impressions of former Packer DC Jeff Hafley heading to South Beach?
Yeah, Hafley, the Dolphins hired him back on January 19th. He'll be the 12th head coach in franchise history. Took over Mike McDaniel, who was let go earlier this month on January the 8th. And it's a bit of a union because he's reunited with the new Dolphins general manager, John Eric Sullivan, who was previously vice president of player personnel for the Green Bay Packers, which Hafley has spent his last 2 years as far as coaching. Defensive coordinator for the Packers last 2 seasons. This is not, even though this is supposed NFL head coaching job, it's not supposed head coaching job in general. He actually coached Boston College in 3 seasons to a 22-26 record. As far as his job with the Packers, the defense ranked 15 yards allowed, and prior to that, it was co-defensive coordinator for Ohio State, defensive backs coach for the 49ers and Cleveland Browns, and also assistant defensive back secondary coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he inherits a situation in Miami. First off, the quarterback situation. Tua Tagovailoa was benched late in the season, just as the Miami Dolphins out of the playoff picture. What's the question mark there is going to be, what do you do with Tua Tagovailoa? You can't cut him because of his enormous contract, how expensive that's going to be. So he's going to have to figure out what to do as far as bringing in a quarterback to maybe compete for the starting job with Tua. Also, another situation he's inheriting is what to do with Tyreek Hill, because Hill obviously dislocated his knee. He was out for the season, but he also have a cap number of $3 million for next season. So what do the Miami Dolphins do? If they cut him early on, they'll save money on the cap. So there's a number of things that he's inheriting. He's also inheriting a Miami Dolphins team that hasn't won a playoff game since 2000. That was the wild card game, the Lamar Smith game, where he ran for over 200 yards against Indianapolis. So the Miami Dolphins, look, it was just a couple of years ago. They were going into the final week of the season, pushing for a division title, and just how things have rapidly changed in the last few years. So Hafley's got his work cut out for him. But the quarterback situation is definitely going to be the biggest thing, because so much of the Miami Dolphins' success, as far as Mike McDaniel's success, rolls so much on whether or not Tua was successful, but also able to stay on the field. Both of those situations had not worked out. So with him and the front office is going to have to figure out, is Tua for the moment going to be the guy, or is it finally a time to finally move forward with a new quarterback at the helm?
Yeah, going to be very interesting. There's a lot of movement that Miami needs to do. They kind of need to do a full reset, and this might be the first start of it. Don't be surprised if Kansas City ends up being a name for Tyreek Hill to kind of do a nice little reunion over there. But you could go anyway on that. Okay. Robert Saleh is back to the coaching atmosphere after 1 year off while playing as the defensive coordinator with San Francisco. So Tennessee hired him. And it's interesting. I don't like the move as much because I feel like the head coach of this team should be offensive minded, because that's where this team needs an overhaul. Now, listen, Salah was only 20 and 36, and in almost 4 years in his time with the Jets, he worked the remainder of 2024 with the Green Bay Packers. This season, he went back to the 49ers. The defense ranked 20th in the NFL, 11th in rushing, but they lost two of their biggest stars, Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, early in the season to season-ending injuries. So you got to also look at what he did to really get that team to where they are, and he got the team to their first Super Bowl in many, many years, but Super Bowl 54 with the league's #2 defense. Now, what everything that Salah needs to do in this situation is going to rely on the #1 pick from the 2025 draft, Cam Ward. Struggled as a rookie, 59.8% of his passes, 15-7 touchdown to interception ratio in 17 games, but he took 55 sacks. Shows a bad offensive line, but also shows some awareness. Now, the bright spots, they came occasionally. Just look back week 2 against the Rams when he had an amazing touchdown where he just kind of avoided all of the Rams, and that was when they were at their peak defensively. But he was 29th in passing yards per game, 34th in completion percentage. Do the math. That's not even top 32. 35th in passer rating, 35th in QBR. Per PFF, he was 39 out of 43. Now, you look at what Caleb Williams did in season #2 with the new coach and Ben Johnson. You look at what Jared Goff did when Sean McVay came around after a miserable rookie season, and now how he's really developed. The problem is those are offensive-minded head coaches, and you only really have one really true member of this offense outside of Ward that's consistent, and that's running back Tony Pollard, who went over 1,000 yards. So the biggest thing is going to be, by the way, what's interesting enough is he also was a finalist for the Cardinals job, but he said this was the more convincing job to take. And I think it may have to do with having at least a future at the offensive position. Now, the biggest question is who's going to take over the offense? We don't know at this time yet, but there are initial list of candidates for the OC role. Now, you have two Salah buddies and Packers coordinator Adam Stenovich, who has never been an offensive coordinator in the NFL, but has worked under Mike LaFleur for many, many years, Matt LaFleur for many, many years. You also have Dolphins assistant Bobby Slowick, who had a great season with C.J. Stroud's first year in 2022-23 with the Texans. or 2023-24. The next season was not so much, and he got fired after last season. You also have names like Cliff Kingsbury, who is looking more and more like he's just going to go into another offensive coordinator job, and Brian Daboll, who could be the Bills head coach when we talk in 2 weeks. Who knows? But the final member of this list is a name that Jay knows very well, and that's a guy who's probably not going to be in Pittsburgh next season, and that's Arthur Smith. He spent the last 2 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers as offensive coordinator. I don't know if Tennessee would like that. Now, he had a great control of the offense when he was with the Atlanta Falcons, but it was 7 games in 3 seasons. He did okay with the Steelers, but they were in a lot of different, not as inconsistent with Smith at the helm. So that's really the question that needs to be said. Now, Saleh deserves a second shot at the head coach because, as we've learned, if you fail with the Jets, we feel sorry for you, and we want you to get another chance at being a head coach, not give you any praise down. But the Titans are a tough organization to turn around, and in a division where 2 teams made the playoffs this season, and the other team started the season until a big injury to their quarterback Daniel Jones. It's going to be an upward battle for the Titans. They may not have a lot of patience like the Jets did for over 4 seasons for Robert Saleh to do the job. All right. With that being said, we're going to end in a second with a little bit of a mini rant, but let's do our close. I hope you've enjoyed. Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, and myself, Stephen Rabinowitz, who auditioned to be the host of NBC's Sunday Night Baseball. I lost. They gave it to some newcomer named Bob Costas, and I hope that rookie has a very good job. Has a very good job.
How does that guy get the gig over you?
I don't know. I don't know at all. While the snow is outside, maybe we should have talked more free agency, but whatever. We'll talk about that soon. While the snow is outside, go to facebook.com/onthesportslines for this show again right now live if you want to watch it immediately, or youtube.com/onthesportslines on demand. Now get into the right headspace and go to X. But Jay, we have a little more to talk about with that.
Yeah, our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like today's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your while to check out. This week, I posted a link to a story by Joe Biscaglia and Tim Graham, who cover the Buffalo Bills for The Athletic. In it, they detail the press conference that Bills owner Terry Pegula had in the wake of the divisional round loss to Denver, which saw a lot of the Bills players, including quarterback Josh Allen, be moved to tears in the locker room, which led to the subsequent firing of head coach Sean McDermott after 9 years at the helm in Orchard Park. In that presser, Pegula threw both McDermott and wide receiver Keon Coleman, who is still on the team and very popular in the locker room.
Very much so.
He threw them both under the bus with regards to why the team lost, while at the same time trumpeting his promotion of GM Brandon Beane to president of football operations. To say that the press conference was a Charlie Foxtrot in terms of the way that Pegula put his foot in his mouth would be an understatement. Biscaglia and Graham get into the nitty-gritty of it all. They were both present at the presser and witnessed the bad optics firsthand, not to mention the damage Pegula may have done to the morale of both the team and Bills Mafia. It's a well-written piece and worth your time to check out.
All right. We will talk to you next time for On the Sports Lines. You may want to get your snowshoes on and get ready to go to Italy. Good night.
Night,
Good night. Good afternoon.